Fáilte go Podchraoladh thuras. Sa chlár seo, be muid ag glórs le bhall an thuras, sin Caolán Ó Coisneacháin. So in this episode of the Turas podcast, we're going to be speaking to a member of the Turas staff, and that is Caolán Ó Coisneacháin. Well, Caolán, could you mar tatu?
Gomai, stu hen.
Gomai gur amaiget. Caolán, inis tú rud bug fuad hen le the hull?
Is me se Caolán, is is bel farste me, agus tá mai gobar mar éiscethóir fólama agus fórreachtaine le Turas, agus tá mai in sa fóst seo le beidir 3 bliana nuas anis. Háisi me caint an Gaeilge don chéadúr nuair bhí me óg, bhí an tau dearag orm, nó gur tógú le Gaeilge me, bhí Gaeilge lífa ag ma ahar, agus ag ma hantais móirí ar hiú ma ahar, agus cé nach ró Gaeilge ar bí ag ma wahar, stocha gur tógú go dá hangach me, lor me Gaeilge le mahar agus Béarla le ma wahar, agus is me se an páiste is sinnion sa chlár na stocha. Tá trúr eile sa teach, bert jarrathe agus dearafar amháin, agus bhó sé den nús agin Gaeilge lóirt le chéile, minic go leor. Gaeilge níos mó na Béarla is tócha.
So tógú le Gaeilge hu, an jarna tú staidir an Gaeilge mar our cema no mar our A-level?
Rin, Module ma chuide dihis, dúspáir a drastal me ar one skull phobal farste in ar na cearach, ar náid a dihis lán Gaeilge a bhí géistin sin ag leba bonscolla. Drastal me ar one skull lán Gaeilge, bonscoll phobal farste in ar vel farste, agus an sin an é sin in éadú ma one a dihis a ail trí van na Gaeilge, hui me ré hig manscoll Béarla, skull worde ar bhuair a gleanna. Nuair a chríitní mé ar skull worde, drastal mé ar old skull olú, agus rinn mé céim I djanga agus litriacht na Gaeilge, agus nuair a chríitní mé an céim an sin win mé dírí lom tico a bhaint amach, teastas ír chéime san a dihis I gálaiste old skull a níomhmóra.
Inta mai, dóibh siúd nach rú mórn ólasochu fa Gaeilgeas, inis dú rud bug fa the chud hahi héan nó the chud tahi héan munscoil phobal first, go dé mar a bhí sé bheith fólam tar bhain na Gaeilge, go spéisle I gcomparáid leis an ide sa fuair tú tar bhain na Béarla ní sin.
Well, le firinne rud ínta nadartha ar fad a bhí an dúsa go háirithe ceannas gur leor mé Gaeilge sa bhalla fásta. Bhí mé cleachtaithe le bheith ceanneal de bheith fólam trí bhain na Gaeilge agus a bheith a pléile daoine fásta rú Gaeilge acu go háirithe. Agus tíirí mé cleachtaithe a bheith ceanneal a bheith ag sugrú go sóisialta is tócha le mar chairde trí bhain na Gaeilge fásta. Ba é an gra rodé, bhí cairde agam mar náid fan bhalla agus fan tráid arú, well, nachrú Gaeilge acu agus arú mé cleachtaithe a bheith a pléileo trí bhain an Béarla. Ach don chud is mó bhí mé ceanneal dá hangach go leor agus bhí mé ionta compartá leis an Gaeilge. Ar náid nuair tú fólam I munscoil lán Gaeilge, is ceanneal gra choraclam an túisgurte tá an, nó gra choraclam de chud sia is tócha. Bín tú Johnny player na háirithe céarna ar fad, agus níl is bug difar atá idir idehis lán Gaeilge agus idehis lán Béarla le firinne, seachas gur trí bhain na Gaeilge a hálíonn sé. Mar sin de win me se ansoltas as má chud jaman sa bhanscoil, tá coppla rud santa sahan ar náid ag gcomparáid leis na scoiltathe Béarla. Tá agad ní bhíon éon Mr. nó Sir nó Miss nó éon rud mar sin an, go tíar a céad aine na hatán, agus sílam agus tú ag sin mar fáiste gur a bhar sin le firinne, mar iríonn tú compartach le a chud múinteoirí, agus bín tú ina nniuh bheith cardiúil lá, agus bín siad sin ina nniuh bheith cardiúil leat, agus ceanneal caidrú láidir a bheith acu leat fásta. Nuair a thu mé hon na manscoile don chéadúir, bhí mé a strachailt písabug ag an tús go háirithe le háirithe ar nós mata agus na hálaíochta, mar bhí na chairmí seo ar fad an Gaeilge agam a dúspáire, tá agad olra agus rint agus fiú ruí bonasathe cos le ceanneal a trí móide a héan nó trí chuir le chéile a héan, agus ní ró na chairmí agam a Béarla ag an tús. Na bhí má bhainteoir a rang a 17 amach nó gur chuir sí lehanach bag ar fáil dúin ar fad, duna daoine le go bhíáil ag an bhanscoil ag manscoil na Béarla, agus ar an lehanana seo bhí rint aistrahan bag deantaí, agus chodí sin go mórlam go háirithe ó hiú na mat ó hiú an wataide agus áhairthe eile mar sin. Ach le firinne ní ró han na ró locht ar bíar mar chud Béarla, ach ní rú mé se has beidir coppla min chairman sin in sa wata agus ruí mar sin ní rú mór an sa differán idir mo chuid idethe sin agus level idethe má cháde a drastal ar one scoil na Béarla. Mar sin de bhí sé compordach go leor an tíon rud na istóthaigh an tús nach rú mé cleachtaithe de bheith glóirtean sin Béarla a rihan le agus síle marhealar sin gur gnearnú beidir dothar ar mo chuid Gaeilge inné tamil ceannas na rú mé a buint ard céarna úsáide astí ach dathraí sin ar fad nar a thosaí mé gáil hon na Gaeltachta agus nar a thosaí mé ar ma chéim ar an ollscoil.
Inta mai. Luí tú an Gaeltachtan sin, dóibh siúd nachhfuil ólas beacu ar muiste le chuir sí anú ar an thaithí a bhí agat sa Gaeltacht agus beidir níos generalta déan an Gaeltacht.
Mai leor, well ar náid is an Gaeltacht agus ceantar ina bhfuil an Gaeilge mar an phríú hanga lortha in sa phobal. Den chuid is mó tá siad ar fáilenis ar chásta iarthar na hhéireann, so mar hampla má héan tú go hiarthar rúnanáil nó go hir thuisgurt rúnanáil tá ceantar ha mór a Gaeltacht an sin agus an ceantar a djahí meise hiige na maitharótaí. Agus go bonasach chur an agriíochtaí cosal le Gaelin na cuasaí seo ar fáil le déagóirí a spragu I drón na Gaeilge. Agus ní ahí me sé go dtí go róméin sa cúgú bléin ar scoil nó wahí mé rah sin bhil tá Gaeilge agam ní an na cuasaí seo díthorm ach níor hiag mé go ddíireach an cineal an tíú social de agus an spragu a thuairthaid sé dú ó hiúm na Gaeilge de. Cineal ní hé nach rú mé río buíochas má chuid Gaeilge nó wahí mé gcónaí grú sé táhaach grú Gaeilge agam ach ní rú mé beidir a smuintú fa má héala caiithú a teagas na Gaeilge nó in arnán na Gaeilge go dtí an fonse sin. In dhéadú freastal ar chuid don na cuasaí Gaeltachta thocraí mé sin go neanhín sin go gaithín má héal trí bhean na Gaeilge de jocalam agus go neanhín má díhall an teangaí a chur hon cin. Agus in dhéadú coppla bliana dhéanú mar scoláire ar na cuasaí sin debrí mé an ar fiú blianta fada le féinne ráda is tócha. Bhí mé gobar mar cheanara agus an sin le coppla bliana nús tá mé gobar mar múinteoir fásta. Agus sílam gáil na cuasaí sin ar dóir ar fad do ghaoine ag gach level le féinne do na daltaí lífa taispanan sé de cin an na féidir heachtaí atá muí sin agus a ríist chuidhhaid na daltaí a hanig frídin choras lean Gaeilge beidir go hairí mé farsin níl siad le féinne ina gcónaí ag geantar Gaeltachta agus is jazz an teangaí eáil mar hangaí luartha phobal an sin. Agus don na daltaí nachfuil mór an Gaeilge acu fólamíonn siad léir mór trí a bheith a geantar cineal a bhfuil tomaidethis de cineal ag ar fáil. Bín siad tomthas jazz a Gaeilge agus ní bhíon mór an Béarla ceadaithe fan chálaiste nó luartha fan chálaiste agus codíonn sin go mór le forbairt a go Gaeilge.
Bent mai. Beidir an chéistearnach a thugam de sin arneoithe bhí tú crasla na cuasaí agus an sin bhí tú gobar mar cheanara is an sin mar múinteoir. Céan tionathair a d mar sin ortsa ar level páisinta?
Well, a ríist mar a dúirt mé cé gur mé gcónaí buíochas má chuid Gaeilge agus gurróla mé Gaeilge ó bhí mé óg níor hiag mé go ddíireach cathaitirú mé gáil an dhéana man scoile agus chuidí sin go mórlam cineal chin mé céim sa Gaeilge dhéanamh agus mé ag freastal ar na cuasaí sin mar scoláire agus an sin nuair bhí mé gal arás mar cheanara agus mar múinteoir thóg sé mar chrí ag ágar na daoine óga seo a bhí ar an thuras cineal céarna sin a ró me seir agus bhí mé géirí iad san na spragu agus a heispint dóibh go bhfuil síl trí bhean na Gaeilge an mhaon sin agus gur féidir a bheith gobar in arnán na Gaeilge gan dua. Agus cumáile sin bhain mé soltas a bheith caint le muinteoir na háite fásta agus maithíam gurrólam mé chuidhór ó muinteoir na háite idir na hana cainte agus fóraíocht agus wahí mé go nearna sin maithis dom a chuid commas Gaeilge agus sílam gur éisbrist an scoithetón do gníorbí. Is com mata sé a géirí bheith gáil an mar scoláire nó a bheith obair an fiú agus iad pí bag ní sinne. Sílam ghfuil idir an crack agus an cardide sa dhéanaan tú ar na cuasaí sin go spragan sé grád an teangaí anat.
So, fuair tú céim an seo mé firste, tá mé deanú an ollscoláladh?
sin ceart.
Enta mai agus cydéimar a bhí sin, go specialta bedíní an tá géirí an diploma anú nó fiú an chéime anú, cydéimar a bhíon céim ditse.
Well, smáithas cehannom an chéad obair bhall bhí agam, agus mé gáil don céim thug an leachtóir thug sé taskbug doing began doing lehanach a bháin a scríú ar mé héin, agus is cehannom ag an am gurú mé ceol ar buile, mar bhí mé se smuintí tíir sáil tá mé lífas a Gaeilge, tá mé caint Gaeilge ó bhí mé dóg, tá mé brabal don áhar seo, agus bhí mé inta mí háasta faoi, agus an sin nuair a thug mé an obair bhall isteach, sin gúir mé beidir cé go faoin chéad nó daithí faoin chéad, mar cé gurú commas, well, cé gurú muín agam agus mé caint Gaeilge is léar nachrú cuasaí gramadí arolalas agam go ráhaith. Chum sa héan an lochtar an bharna beidir idir an mhunscoil agus an olscoil ó hiú a bheith glúirt na Gaeilge gachla. Ach cibé thug sin cinneal wascail sin mé písabug, heag mé raid caihí mé héana a hocrú písabug, níl mé có lífa agus mar a híl mé beidir nó níl mé có commasach agus mar a híl mé, agus sprág sin mé i dró na gramadí is tócha. Chur mé héan faoi glas am thomra ar fiú coppla le folklór, agus hanig mé maith agus bhí go leor rialathe fólam thugam, agus caiim mé ragarú na leachtóirí ar dóid ar an olscoil fásta, chudí siad san go mór ó hiú na gramadí de go háirithe, agus wahí mé gurú an cuasa bhí sé cinneal ilcham sithe, bhí go leor modul difriúlan le gurú rudaig an da hananne, bhí spéisi, tá go bheith spéisi agad in áhar aigen, agus is cuma damráig ar bhain sé leis an litríocht nó leis an teangaí luartha nó leis an gramadach nó cibérad, agus bhí de seo gin modul an Gaeilge na Halabaní anú fásta, rud ó bhain me sé sult agus tarbh as am thuairm, agus ar náid comáile sin ceanna na buach fansí a bhain leis a céim na turas Gaeltachta, Jimmy muid go gáirta thorce, áite bhfuil congurach go leor leis an ceantar Gaeltachta a rúmeise gobar an le fada, si ddír a hartar an corneal ó bhatharódaí, agus mar sin de bhí aithne go mar chuid do bhaitear na háite, agus bhí mé cleachtaí leis an bhlascáinte, agus bhain mé ansaltas na cuasaí sin ag chuir le chuid Gaeilge agus le stór focail, agus wahí mé go ddír go ruin bhí an ceamí dúsa túsa, ní bheith mo chumas luartha leach comáid agus mar atáis ganné, agus comáile sin chuir sé le a híal go páirsanta fásta nó gurú de segam Erasmus í anú bliana amháin, te mé hon na Gearmania, stóla mé cobbla focail Gearmanise, agus bhíon bblion sin ar dáir fad caihimara, agus go dtíach thugann céim de sin a dú nach mé agam gannaí.
Enta mai, dúirt tú níbalúchan sin go neahí tú go choiste olscoil a níb mara i néidir an chéimecréicnú agus rinn tú an tíco. Arnúir níl tú gobar mar bhúnseoir anis, ar bhaid leat sa díras deachar an taithí múinteoireachta go generalta tugadsa?
So, le féinne tá méid teagas go rangana Gaeilge do gine fásta ó bhí mé 8 díos na mar sin. An chéad rang riú do rógam na rang bag ar bhuathar armóin sin an sa Leorlan, agus uair sa teachtain bhuailinn leo agus bhíú rang agin, agus sin an aid le féinne ar ólam mé fan múinteoireacht Gaeilge go háirithe do gine fásta. Is ceann am rinn mé mancóga olca le féinne ag an tús, tá go dagar thu daine céistarm agus mana míhain freigra rólas agam, chumhín rud igen, agus an sin cinneal carú naira orm copplar do bhhair sin nó gur hanig daineiste, agus gur siad well dark mé san ochlóir nó lóir mé le duine teacht agus dúirt siad san duine, agus dóla mé go mar gas le réit ní féidir lom sin í. So dóla mé go bhfuil sé cear go leor a rá nílas agam nó dú mé amachtaid, dóla mé fásta go ddíireach faoin dóil a bheith caiithúla daoine agus an dóile go háirithe le téimí níos casta a bhíniu ar bhealach siimplí. Tá agad manar féidir leat rud a bhíniu go héfachtach, beidir ná bhil tuiscint ceart agad ar an rud sin tú héin. Go dtíar dóla mé fan chorthaige is fearr le go mé daoine abalta rudí a chebhniu agus dóla mé cinneal an táhacht a bhain leis an chóra agus an teangaí bheo. Agus ó hen tá méid teagas grangna do gine fásta le, well, tá mai teagas rangan de gine fásta ó hin le féinne ar fod na cara ar fod bhil farste agus ar fod a dóin go punse hí an táhar am Gaeilge America ag punse amháin le mar FLTA a chuid Fulbright agus a bheith teagas san hallscoil in sna hallscoil na hálan sin ach wahí mé mar sin de goróin an teagas gan andú agus in é coppla blion de bheith obair leis na páistí wahí mé beidir nach meise an duine is fearr don fóst sin tá mé bhád níos comparí a bheith teagas de gine fásta agus fecim go bhfuil neartdaoine amhaon sin atá níos comparí a bheith teagas páistí agus atá bhád níos fearr a gáildán na meise le féinne wahí me sé gcónaí go rú mé sásta nó níos sásta a bheith obair le daoine fásta agus mar sin de inéadú coppla bliana dhéanú gáil don bhain scoíocht agus don fan scoíocht hánig de sin níos teachtas seachas bheith obair le thuras agus ghlach mé leis an deis, happy mé an deis agus tá mé de sásta gur happy mar tá man seo mar dearm ó hin agus ag buinte an soltas an obair agus as na daoine as coideachta na daoine ar fad agus sin go ráitínta an le bheith obair tá obair riochtúil speisialta ar siúil ó gin an seo agus níor wahí mé le hid le póstar Béarla a bhí agam riú rih seo agus tá méid compartachanna se bheith teagas go gach level teagas gom rangana ó íorgláán tosathirí go dtí level an ardrangana agus fiú le hagraíochtaí eile ar nós an ddraithid bí me teagas rangan í ard level fásta agus thugan an teastas as sníomh mura an deis sin dúla féinne nó ní hocail rangana acadúla agus gané agus tá mí de buíoch go rún deis sin agam go ddíach bhain mé tharbh solta as an cuasa héin cé nár sé ach bliana amháin agus go bhfuil cinneal ceara bliana de áhar brúteas tehan sa bblion sin blion strasfuir gan áras ar bé ach hagus sé chuid mhórdú fan múinteoireacht agus fan taal agus maithaí am anis go bhfuil mé abalta na skillanna sin a úsid ins na ranganí a bí agam le daoine fásta.
Inta mai thara. Beidir mar cheistearnach nó an dána cheistearnach a tugam sa deis na céan róla tugad san seo an thuras mar sogam go mbeadh tú ag teagas a go déad na rudí eile a dhéanam tú.
Well, mar luí mé haine féin is éasca thóir fólama agus fórreachtainna mé agus níl mé omlan cinse go déan cíalta lei sin. Well, agus tú gobar an seo, táíonn sé go gceanráilta síle man arnal na Gaeilge ach go háirithe beidir an seo an thuras tá pobl láidir agin agus dearthainn go bhfuil cuidúir a gotsinna agin leis an phobal a bhí ar bhúthar seoide ins na 7óidí is na 8óidí. Cinneal an mána sin a bhí acu ná habar é deanna sin go ddéireach mar atá an seo is comach go déan cinneal rud a turbán bín an ornan ar fad a géirí chodú agus a géirí an rud a éascu cubídóid agus is féidir agus cumáid leis an oran tá na hebrithe Jónatha indín de táhat a thuhíomh sinnde me sé go pásan dín de buíchas an chodú hagann si dúin ach an oran go gceanráilta sílam go muid cáilte ganiad. Ar fiú tamil fad an sin bhí mé gobar in monscoilna áitiúla agus go háirithe monscoil braneol an sin ag chur an Gaeilge chun cin agus chur rangan na Gaeilge ar fáil don na páistí go ddéireach. Cumáid leis an obair sna scoiltathe agus an teagas gur fad de gine fásta. Bín ahan cinneal rud ar idir láhagin, bím sa scríú tuairiscí agus a choristeach ar bhaoinniu, bím plé ar bím buinte agam leis an grúpa mantarachta sogin an seo. Ag agrú amachtaí le féinne ag agrú amachtaí leis an teangaí a thugáil tíomh muí den seomar ranga nó ní deis sin a bí sig na fólamúirí sogin go ráhannig mar sin na bíman de géirí sinna thuirtáibh. Bhí pop-up gealtacht a gin an sin ar fiú tamil agus tá géirí sinna thuirtaráist. Go bonasach ahan cinneal rud fan spéir ní bhíon dá lá mar an ggéirne. Brahan sé ar cé hagan isteach an ofig nó brahan sé ar go dé tá muid a flanal de heachtain na Gaeilge nó do cubírod ach tá sé aon de saltware an dóid sin. Agus cumáile sin is minic a bhí am muí a tuairt cainte in sa phobal nó cinneal a deanú chur a lethir de cinneal ag in na scoiltathe nó brahan sé go ddéireach ar cubí a thaithí. Cumáile sin ceannas gur múinteoir cailíthe mé bín buinte agam leis an níoscail sagin, níoscail na seota. Is minic a bhí ar am gáil isteach agus clúdach a thuairt istíon sin agus is ceist casta í sin le féin ach go bonach deanam héan agus an codgead an an cabbí rud atá díich leis an tugra seo a chuineil a gáil agus sin go dtíar mar atá.
An tíos dearnach go tugam sa dit cén cóile a bheith ógad do ólamóra ó do haí héan.
Má go leor. Gan géirí a bheith rá cliché an seo, ceann donna seanachlaí is fearlam na bathatanga í a lúirt agus maithíam gur bailí sin leis an Gaeilge go háirithe ceannas gur mintanga í. Bín sé dilí úranta an Gaeilge a chur a dúsáte ach is cuma cén ceanneal level a tugad mas fólam miorthú glán tosa thóir nó má tú a freislar ardrang nó má tú ag obair an arn an na Gaeilge tá sé ionta táhaach cabbí Gaeilge tugad a úsid go léithúil mas féidir ach ar a léad ar a dogus is féidir. Agus maithíam gur cheartúin mas Gaeilgeoirí muid nó má tá ag obair an sa trásin gur cheartúin a bheith brodúil fan teangaí agus gan naira a bheith orín agus muid a caiint le daoine. Is cehann le múr amháin go raibh mé caiithú aman sa Gaeltacht. Dibrí mé ar coppla cuasa sin am maithrótaí agus fan am Jimmy mé na bhalla bhí mé de clatíthe de bheith dúirt an Gaeilge a hanna le. Bhí mé muí le mo chuid cardide. Ag íthe béla sílam agus hánig an freaslaí hart agus dúirt mé gar maigad leiche agus an sin dúirt mé sorry, thank you. Agus go dtíar hena dhé sin rin mé macnúir sin agus dúirt mé bud go tíú mé ggó má leiscail fa sin má chiad teangaí agus ní thar méid dothir bí ar gar maigad an sin agus is léar gur hiig sí go déh i ggéist agam. Agus bhaithí mé óhain go bhfuil sé táhaach go dtíar an Gaeilge a chur arráist an méle phobal mas féidirlinn agus ní hiig le duna bhhain sinna dhéanú caithí muid a ligíireachta dhéanú sinna dhéanú agus ní hamháin go gurthaí sin an teangaí arráist an méle phobal ach fásta codúthaí sé leat le do chuid chumas héan. Tá sé de gulgus ar aine lig ar níhall a dhéanú gus cuma cean Turas a dagan muid an teangaí seo a haballt agus a cén siú ní hamháin go bhfuil si beá gion cé go bliain eile ach go bhfuil si láidir go bhfuil fáas agus forbert a point leiche.
Anish, Béarla. So now we're going to be speaking to Caolán Ó Coisneacháin, one of the members of the team within Turas. So Caolán, how's things? How are you keeping?
Tá me go maiid, I'm all good.
Okay.
I got all right.
Tequila sin.
I can say the basic phrases like, you know.
Sin go bra. Well, okay, Johnny Mr. Sin. Caolán, first things first, would you just like to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, certainly. So of course my name's Caolán. I'm from West Belfast, and I've been working here with Turas for the past 3 years or so.
So Caolán, unlike many people here, you actually didn't learn Irish as an adult, but you actually learned Irish as a child. Would you like to tell me a little bit about how you learnt Irish and maybe something that's maybe unusual for us adult learners?
Yeah, as you just said there, I was very, very fortunate to have learned Irish at home as a child. My dad was a fluent speaker. He'd grown up the same way as me. My grandparents had been strongly associated with the Shaw's Road Gaeltacht and the Irish language revival here in Belfast in the 70s. So they brought my father and my uncle up the same way, just by only speaking Irish to them at home. So my dad did the same thing. So he only would have spoke Irish to us at home. My mum doesn't speak a word now. My mum, she was a monoglot English speaker. And even though she's made various attempts to learn the language, she's never really stuck at it. So it was useful when we were kids because we had our own wee sort of secret language and we were able to make plans and stuff like that. And you know, she wouldn't have a clue what we were talking about essentially. But apart from that, like it's a very normal childhood, especially because we attended an Irish language primary school and we attended Bunskull Football Forest on the Shaw's Road, and it was all we knew essentially. We didn't understand that it was unique. Or I remember having friends and stuff who would ask me like, "Oh, how do you say such and such in Irish?" And I remember being like, oh, it was almost like a chore for me to be like, "Oh my God, like how do you not know this?" You know, it's just the way we grew up essentially. I mean, I realise now as a teacher that I was very, very fortunate because it can be a difficult language to learn. So the fact that I was immersed in it from a young age just made my life way, way easier.
So you went to Bunskull Football First, which is in West Belfast, and then you went on to an English-speaking secondary school. Would you like to sort of highlight the differences in your own experience going between the two?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, there wasn't too it wasn't too difficult of a transition. The education for the type of education you receive at an Irish medium primary school is basically the same as you receive at an English medium primary school here. The only real difference is that it's done almost entirely through Irish. So because of that, some of the subjects that we'd studied, like certain terms associated with science or maybe maths at first were maybe difficult. I'd been used to obviously ulra agus rinch as opposed to multiply and divide, so it took me a while to learn just what those wee terms meant at first, but I was still perfectly capable of doing the sums and whatever else. But I mean, apart from that, the only major difference was that I was maybe socialising a bit less through Irish than I would have been doing at primary school. There were 2 or 3 lads from my primary school who'd come to secondary school with me, but apart from that, most of my friends then were English speakers. So I found that was really the only major difference. And I found maybe that my Irish maybe started to suffer a wee bit because of that, because I wasn't speaking it as often. And even though like the Irish teachers we had at secondary school were brilliant, like, and very supportive, you just weren't getting enough of it essentially. But that all changed then when I started going to the Gaeltacht, and then eventually whenever I started my degree at university, So no, I can't say it was too difficult of a transition, to be honest.
You mentioned there the Gaeltacht. So for those that don't know about the Gaeltacht, can you highlight what it is, what experience you have from the Gaeltacht, and then what sort of impact that's played on your life?
Essentially, a Gaeltacht is an area in which the Irish language is the main spoken language of the community there, in daily life. So most of the Gaeltachts that we have remaining in Ireland are on the west coast here. So for example, in Donegal, if you go to the northwest Donegal, there's some strong Gaeltacht areas, and there are organisations such as Ghaeilge who organise courses in these areas for teenagers, essentially, to just to give them a bit of immersion in the language and to try and inspire them to speak a bit more Irish. So I never thought that I needed to go to a Gaeltacht when I was younger. I mean, I'd been to the areas before because my uncle had a house in Ghaeilge for a while, so we'd been up and I was familiar enough with the areas, but I never thought that I needed to go on one of these courses because I thought, I have Irish, so it'll not benefit me. So I went to the Gaeltacht for the first time then when I was sort of 15, 16, and immediately just fell in love with the area, the course, the friends that I'd made there, and it really just changed my perspective on the Irish language essentially too, because I wouldn't say that I'd taken it for granted really up until then, but I don't think I realised quite how fortunate I was or how lucky I was to have had that much Irish at such an early age. So it really just inspired me and it kind of made up my career decision for me too in those years, because I decided that I wanted to work in the Irish medium sector and try and do what I could to keep the language alive and not only surviving but thriving. So I went back then after attending as a student for a few years. I went back to work there as a ceannara or a leader for too many years probably. And then on the past couple of years I've been working up there as a teacher as well. So it's a lot of my closest friends I met at the Gaeltacht, and it just had a massive impact on my life.
You mentioned there that you went to Caolán or Ulster University to do your degree in Irish. Would you like to sort of give people just an overview of your experience doing your Irish degree?
Yep, I have to say I loved university. I loved my course. I was very interested in it from day one, essentially. I thought the lectures were great, the friends that I made were great, and the modules were excellent as well. What I will say was as well, the nice thing about it was it gave me a bit of a reality check on the first day, because I remember the very first homework we got. The very, very first homework that was given to us was just a simple assignment, 1 page on May Hain, or, tell me about yourself, essentially. So I was getting a bit annoyed about that, because I was sort of thinking, I'm X amount of money in debt here paying for this course, and, we're getting childish assignments like that. But I remember when I handed it in then and it was marked and sent back to me, I think I only got maybe 40 or 50% or something, because they really focused on the grammar aspect of it and basically told me your grammar is rubbish. So it was kind of nice because it was a reality check for me. I maybe thought I was brilliant because I can speak Irish and this is, I was almost a wee bit arrogant maybe. So that kind of put me back in my place a bit, and it forced me to to go and take my grammar a bit more seriously. But I thought that the modules provided and the lectures at that university were excellent. They really, I mean, my Irish is at the level it's at today, but more or less because of them. And it also kind of showed me the different options that were available through Irish. And, you know, the sort of traditional route is, oh, you do Irish, so you have to teach it. And I know maybe I'm a bit cliche because that is kind of what I do, but it also kind of showed me that there were other opportunities. You know, through my degree, I had the opportunity to go and study in Germany for a year through the Erasmus program. And just we got to do a module in Scottish Gaelic, and I didn't really have much knowledge of Scottish Gaelic at all before that. And it was brilliant to meet all these interesting people and to learn about these things. I thought the degree was excellent, and I would recommend it to anybody who had an interest in Irish.
So, Caolán, you've been teaching now for well over 10 years, both in adult classes and actually in primary schools. Would you like to tell me a wee bit about doing your PGCE in St Mary's University College, what it was like teaching children as opposed to adult learners, and then what sort of attracted you into Turas to work full time?
Mm-hmm. So I suppose my first experience as a teacher was as an 18-year-old, fresh into university. I managed to pick up a teaching gig in the library on the Ormeau Road, and so it was a wee class. Just we met once a week, and you know they were looking at a teacher to facilitate the group essentially. So I kind of learned a lot about teaching in that class. You know, I made several mistakes, as you might imagine. You know, but I learned essentially the basics of teaching. You know, that it was okay to say I don't know or I'm not sure about that, as opposed to just making something up and then getting found out, which maybe happened to me once or twice at the start. So I learned you know it's better just to say I don't know and then to go and find out. And it's such a useful tool for learning language as well, teaching, because you know, you can't teach something unless you understand it. So you have to really make sure your knowledge of grammar is sound and your knowledge of the different conventions for writing and for speaking are sound as well. I thought that was a very useful introduction for me to the world of teaching. And I've found since then that, you know, as much as I enjoyed St Mary's and as much as I really thought that course helped me, I knew from after a couple of months working in schools that maybe teaching kids wasn't for me. You know, there's people out there who are better at it than me, and I'm not ashamed or anything to admit that. Like I'll fully just be honest there and say, you know, I just wasn't the best at that, to be honest. I much prefer teaching adults and working with adults. And so despite the fact that I'm no longer working full time in schools, I mean, a lot of the things that I learned at St Mary's have been of enormous benefit to me, in terms of resources, in terms of the theory of teaching, and also just in terms of classroom management and managing your time and being organised and things. You know, I mean, anyone who knows me knows I'm not maybe the most organised person in the world, but, you know, teaching adult classes is my sweet spot. It's where I'm comfortable, you know. And again, I felt that I wasn't the best person for the job at teaching children. I'm much more comfortable with adult learners.
Just tell me a wee bit about what attracted you to Turas, and then maybe a wee bit of, because you are a man that's worked now in quite a few centres, working schools, and just give me a wee bit of an overview of what you think personally of Turas as an organisation.
By the time COVID hit, I kind of realised that I didn't want to be working in schools anymore in that capacity. With the school closures and stuff like that, you know, especially then having to try and teach kids over Zoom and using Google Classroom and everything, it was just a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. So that was kind of the nail in the coffin. So I was fortunate enough that I'd applied for a position with Fulbright as an FLTA, a foreign language teaching assistant, in America. So I was lucky enough to spend a year in North Carolina teaching in various colleges and universities over there. And then when I got home then, as I say, I'd made up my mind I didn't want to go back to the schools. So I worked for a while in the Culturland, but it was only part-time and I was looking something full-time. And I was very fortunate that the job here in Turas came up. So I took it, and, you know, my first day I wasn't too sure what to expect. I'd never been to that part of the city before, but as soon as I arrived in Skenos, you know, I just got such a warm welcome. And like, you know yourself, Turas is just a lovely wee spot. Like, we're very lucky to have the facilities we do. And, you know, I'm meeting Linda and Jaff and everyone on the first day. It was just, you know, that's what sealed it. That's where I knew I really wanted to take up that position, essentially. And as I say, I've been there ever since. And it's really unique as a job because it's just so totally different to anything else out there. We really are sort of pioneering, you know, teaching Irish and promoting the language in areas where maybe traditionally in the last 100 years or so it hasn't been welcomed or it hasn't been supported. So it's just very, very, it's very rewarding then to see people's attitudes change. And I feel that not only are we helping the language, but we're also maybe helping to change attitudes here in society, which, I mean, can only be positive for the future generations, you know. So no, I really enjoy my job, and I'm not just saying this because Linda's standing behind me with a gun to my head. I actually genuinely love it here, and, you know, yeah, I'll always have a fondness for Turas.
My final question for you, obviously you've taught for a long time and you've learnt yourself and you've went through university. So taking all your experience, standing on both sides of the classroom, what would your advice be to learners? What would be your words of wisdom?
Okay, well, not to be too cliche, but one of my favourite chanogel or proverbs in Irish is Baha Changa I Alorch. So it's essentially, you know, the survival of a language depends upon people speaking it, essentially. And I feel that's true, particularly with a minority language like Irish, where we don't have the sort of security that the other major European languages might have. I feel like it's vitally important that no matter what level of Irish we have, whether we're complete beginners or whether we're fluent speakers, you know, whether we're working in the Irish medium sector or elsewhere, I feel it's crucial that we use what Irish we have, and that we try and just not only improve our own Irish and better our own Irish, but just that we try and normalise it in society. You know, that's again some of the work we do with Turas. We do try and organise events and trips and activities outside of the classroom just to normalise the speaking of the language. And I think you can really see a difference, particularly in this area of East Belfast, that people are now much more accepting of the language than maybe they would have been 20 or 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago. I'll just finish off with a very, very quick story here. It's not Oscar winning or anything, but it's just a small example of what I was talking about. So after having worked in the Gaeltacht one year for a couple of weeks, you know, I was very much used to speaking Irish to everybody. So when I got home, I met a few friends and we met for some food. And I remember the waiter came around and, you know, I said Gheobhaidh, and then, you know, because I forgot myself, so I said Gheobhaidh, and I went, oh, sorry, I mean thank you. And I was only, you know, when I was home later on thinking about that, I was like, well, why did I feel the need to apologise? Like, I haven't insulted the man, and I'm pretty sure he understands what I was saying, regardless of whether he has Irish or not. You know, Gheobhaidh is a fairly well-known phrase. So I just sort of thought that's the kind of the mindset that we need to get rid of. You know, we should be proud of speaking our language and not ashamed. And I just feel that, again, regardless of what level you have, we need to do what we can to try and speak it as much as possible.
Enta mai, Chian gur míle maigad as Sean you. Bhí sé special to our fad, so gur míle maigad. Thank you very much. That was a fantastic interview. So thank you very much.
Gur maigad hen, slán agus banna.
Slán.